picks up anything, that's fine. If not, so you're from Italy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Benjamin.
Okay.
Or Benny. And you're Stefano?
Stefano. Yeah.
Stefano. Okay. Well, let's meet a little bit. Try to find out a few things about each other. How long have you been involved in youth ministry?
I'm a pastor in the south of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pastor in 3 little church.
Okay.
And since 3 years.
Okay. So you finished the seminary 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of youth do you have in your church? What are the age groups?
From generally speaking, from 20 to 35.
Mm-hmm. So they're young adults.
Yep.
Okay. And around how many?
15.
15?
15.
Okay. For now, I'm the chaplain for the Adventist Theological Institute in Romania. I've been in pastoral ministry for almost 20 years. I think about 17 right now, 18. This year, 18. And my first district was as a youth minister, and then I got promoted to being a pastor. But I always enjoyed working with youth, which meant that even though I was a senior pastor, I concentrated my activities based on youth. And I think that it's one way to keep your church growing is to work with the youth in the church. I have 2 passions. One is evangelism and one is working with youth. And I think it's because of the evangelistic passion that I started to value the work with youth, seeing how hard it is to win someone in the church. Sometimes you hold crusade after crusade and you see very little result. And at the same time we have youth that are departing from the church. And I think it's a better investment to invest in our youth to keep them in the church than to just do evangelistic crusades. But I do both of them.
Okay.
And with at Chenika I work as a chaplain, and we are involved in both inside the country evangelistic crusades and world mission as well. And every time I come back from one of these meetings, every youth that I take with me is so excited. Firstly, because they see that it is something they can do, and also because they were able to see with their own eyes some people's lives being changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I always enjoy talking with them every evening for the whole period when I'm there, because they come back and can't wait to tell me something new that happened with them. There's just a few things that I want to go through. I divided this in 2 things that are very important. One is the theoretical part and one is the practical part.
Okay.
I think one of the most important things in youth ministry is to not give up. Church politics usually want results now. They invest into something and they want something to be seen this year. Well, unfortunately, youth ministry is not so popular among the church officers because you don't see results now.
Immediately, yeah.
It takes years to see results, and once we that work with youth start to understand this, we don't see it as our own fault if we don't see results this year. And we start to make long-term plans, 10 years, 20 years from now. And you've been only for 3 years, but I've been involved in youth ministry for 20 years, worked with youth before I graduated seminary, and it's a joyous experience when they come to me I have young adults now, or maybe adults in the church. They come to me when I go visit some other places. They say, "Do you remember me?" And of course I don't, because they're all changed. And they tell me of this activity or this camp or some other place where we met, and how I influenced their lives and how I got them to maybe read a passage from the Bible or to pray. And it's always exciting for me when this happens. And it happened more than one time. So this is one of the reasons I'm able to say it's worth to never give up. Just keep going.
I grew in an Adventist family,
Mhm.
and most of my family are pastor.
Mhm.
But I never have a personal faith with God until 16 years old.
Mhm.
After, thanks to the program with the Pathfinder program, I knew Jesus,
Mhm.
and this is my life. And
So Pathfinders,
yeah,
I think Pathfinders is a great activity in the church, and it has touched so many lives. Mine too. I got acquainted with them when I lived in the States as a young child, and I think it's one of the things that kept me in church. And I grew through the ranks, and I always, even now, I love working with them, because they're at the age when they are also creative and also exploring, and they do so much stuff and want to do so much. Sometimes they seem to be the fearless category or age category in the church. I didn't coin this never give up. It was Winston Churchill who said that, and I think among the Second World War. And the thing is, I can't give a prescription, let's call it that, of youth ministry. Maybe sometimes we're used to saying, this is 10 steps to a successful youth ministry. It doesn't work that way, as far as I found, because every young person is different. And what works with them doesn't work with the other. And you have 3 churches, you said, and sometimes it differs from one youth group to another youth group, even though they're in the same area and they have different mentality. Last evening I was talking to a young pastor telling me that the churches are in the same city, but the youth from one church don't do anything with the youth from the other church, because they are so different. And I think it's okay to be different, and you shouldn't fear this, or we shouldn't fear this, because that's how things move in this world. They move very fast, they change very fast, and youth have a tendency to follow this. For example, even with technology, you go to a store and you buy a new phone, by the time you get home, there might be a newer one on the market. And that's how things work with youth ministry. And in the beginning, I used to think that I had a bunch of answers that I could give to them, but I came to realize that one of the secrets in youth ministry is I have to learn to listen, and have to learn to let them make proposals, and to see where this youth ministry will reach. And I think that in youth ministry, that's what we need. We need a team of listeners, and we need an informal setting and informal workers that will just lend an ear to the youth to let them talk. Where the Bible tells us that he who speaks much makes mistakes. So I think it's a biblical teaching as well. I tell my students when I talk with them about youth ministry, about how wrong it can be when they try to answer everything instead of listening. For example, I tell him about a young person that I talked with. One day he came to me and he asked me, "Pastor, what do you think about a young Adventist going to a movie theater?" And I was very tempted to tell him, many answers that we as pastors provide to the young people. But instead of doing this, I asked him, "What do you think?" And he told me a little bit about his philosophy and what he should do. And that continued into a discussion, and we discussed many things. And what happened is, me and I got closer, and in about 3 or 4 weeks, we had another discussion that was very serious, in which he told me that when he asked me about movie theaters, he was actually testing me to see how judgmental I was, because he had another problem. He was sleeping with a girl, and he's had a more than normal intimacy relationship, and he wanted to talk with me about this subject, but if he would have saw that I was critical, then he would not have had the courage to come and to talk with me. And I think we need men and women that are able to listen to young people and to listen to God as well, and to let Him provide answers. The other thing is to have regular meetings with the youth. But I think our ministry should be based on building relationships. And relationships are built by having regular meetings, by meeting and talking and doing activities together. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing. Some people say, okay, let's have a youth Bible study every Wednesday, and they do it and then they get bored of it and they stop doing it. I think it would be better to just say, let's meet with the youth every Wednesday, and sometimes have Bible study, sometimes watch a movie, sometimes go out to the park, sometimes do different things, but meet with them on a regular basis. That way it is something in their life that they can depend on, knowing that this is part of it. And at the same time, it helps to build a relationship between us and them, to help them see us available for them all the time. There are many ways to build this relationship, but I think that this is one of them, and by communicating. The other thing, I think we shouldn't compete with the world in trying to do these extravagant things, mostly because we don't have the money to do it, and also because they have a lot more training than we do, and you see how they do all these reality shows, and you're thinking, maybe I can do this too, or do all these games, I can do this too. And it's possible sometimes, but it also depends on how much finances you have. And we find that financial-wise, youth are not the most rich people in the church. And sometimes when you come up with a interesting, let's say that idea to the parents or the main sponsors of youth activities, they don't want to support different activities.
Yeah.
So I think that it's better that we have our own way. And now the other reason is, I don't know if you read the book, Hey, If You Love Them, They Will Come. It's written by Bailey Gillespie, and
not yet.
It's a good book. You should read it. In this book, he talks about a study that was done between 1999, I believe, and 2009 on youth, and he says that it has been found out that youth don't respond the same way that they used to, in the sense that before you could count on buying pizza and inviting the youth over for pizza, and they would come just to have the free pizza. But now they want something more meaningful, and I think because it's something that they already can experience themselves without having a church moment. And let's have pizza at church, for example. Yeah, they can order it at home, or they can go out with a friend. Because of this, it doesn't offer the same interesting potential for them to be present with the youth in church, in a church setting for this. And at the same time, the way we feel that we should have youth groups with students together to have this fellowship, it doesn't really ring a bell to them anymore, because while it used to be that you need to gather together to have fellowship, now they have a fellowship by staying at home, turning on the computer or the phone and talking with each other, and they experience a sense of fellowship. I think that we should probably go back to our basics in youth ministry, which is provide a way for them to meet God, and to help them to understand that that God's word is still relevant, and that His principles are still principles that should be followed by them or by us today. The other thing, our mission is to lead youth to Christ. It never has changed. If we try to do anything else, our ministry will fail, because Christ should be is the center of our work. Sorry, it's been such a long time since I spoke English that it's difficult for me. It takes about 3 days for me to readjust. So I've been speaking Romanian for so long that it's difficult. But I read into the Adventist Youth Ministry movement and how it began. I always ask my students this: did the Adventist Church have a youth movement in the beginning? And the answer is they didn't have an official youth movement in the beginning. Well, the reason was that everybody in the church was young. Ellen White was 17, 18. Andrews was about 17, 18. James White was a little bit older. Loughborough was, I think, 15 when he started preaching. And so most of the Adventist leaders were youth at the time, so they didn't feel the need for organized youth ministry.
Those are different, the society at the time.
Sorry?
The society at the time are different also.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was also different. But about 20 years later, I believe, if I remember the date correctly, is when the youth in the church started to feel the need to have a youth movement.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because of society issues as well, in the sense that other churches, like the Baptist Church and the Methodist Church, they had their own youth clubs, but the Adventists didn't. They didn't feel the need. And youth in the church started to make progress towards this. And when they started this, their main idea or their main goal was we should have it was called a boys club in the beginning, that will meet for missionary purpose to lead other youth to Christ. And it's interesting, if you read the way they organized it like a church, with offerings and with reports and everything. It was interesting for me to read it, because they just took the church model and applied it to their group. And then a little bit later, they also allowed girls to be part of these groups as well. And it took a while for the church to accept the youth movement in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it took actually, I think, about 10 years until they started to appoint someone to be the youth leader. And in the beginning, it was the Sabbath school department that was taking care of the leadership as well. And I'm not going to talk about other things that were addressed here today, like to be authentic, because youth can see right through us. But I need to stress this, that you need to have fun doing it. If you don't enjoy it, then you're not in the right place. When you need to have fun doing it. Youth youth need us, and if you want to work with youth, I want to congratulate you, because it's something that many pastors fear. Youth is something that they don't want to have anything to do with you, because it's like a strange population to them. It seems that they speak a different language, listen to a different music, dress differently. So most of the pastors, when they hear about youth ministry, they say, it's okay, I'm not equipped to do this, which is wrong, because I think every pastor should be a youth pastor, either through his own personal involvement or by delegating someone and providing everything that that delegate needs so that youth ministry could work in the church. And I think that we're wrong, because we can all learn to do things. Even as a young pastor, you figure out there are some things that you're doing now that you didn't think that you would be able to do in the past. And you will continue to learn to do things. And youth ministry is something that you can learn, and everybody can learn to do it. And, just like if you have certain abilities, then you can learn to play an instrument, and you can learn a new language. And youth ministry is the same. It's true that there are some born leaders, but and things are easier for them, but that doesn't mean that someone that wasn't born with these capabilities can't be as successful or even more successful than the person who's born with these abilities. What matters is that we gather knowledge and we apply the knowledge that we receive. And one of the hard things in youth ministry that I've found is that you always have to keep in touch with all the new information and to read a lot. And then you need to learn how to apply this information. Because, and I return back to the original thought, youth need us in their journey. The reason they need us is, I would say all the way up to 40 years of age, even more after that, but I'm saying 40 because I'm 41 almost, and students always ask me, what age is youth ministry till? And I tell them every year, it's 40 next year, 41 and 42. And but we go to different changes. Some psychologists call these conflict stages in our life that help us to identify ourselves, and the way we resolve these conflicts help us to move to different stages in our life. And especially high school students, even before or after this, young adults, they go to a stage or through stages in their life where they need to answer a few questions for themselves in order to become successful in an area or another. Or who am I going to marry? That's one question that is very important. Or what career should I choose? Or faith questions, who is God for me? What and how much do I want Him to be implicated in our life? And how we are present in their life helps them to receive different answers and helps them to overcome certain conflicts in certain manners that will be helpful to them down the road. I like to give an example. For example, there's a young girl in church. She is 18 years old. She is finishing high school. She has never disobeyed her parents. Always a good girl, coming to church regularly, never missing classes at school, getting only A's. And when you see her, you are tempted to say, what great parents she had, the way they raised her up. And doesn't really seem to have a conflict in her life until during that era of high school, in which she has to choose what college she will go after she passes her baccalaureate exam. and she wants to go, for example, to our art school, and her parents want her to become a doctor. And this is the first time that she is really in a great conflict in her life, a conflict that might even lead to her disobeying her parents. And because of this, she's becoming stressed, she's opening up, and she doesn't know what to do. At the same time, you have a young boy, about the same age, finishing high school, but he was mostly out of high school than in high school, smoking, drinking, listening to music, and going to church mostly because he's being dragged by his parents to go to church. And people, when they see this, are tempted to say, oh, how badly he was raised by his parents, why can't they control him? And when the reality is that both of them are the same. Both of them are going through the same conflict of their age period, and how they resolve this conflict will help them in the future, and how we are involved in this conflict will help them in their future. Because neither of them feel comfortable to talk with their parents. Neither of them feel comfortable to go before the church board and talk to the church board, or with their teachers sometimes, or with the pastors sometimes. Sometimes the pastor is the same voice as the parents, and it is a great help if they have an adult in their life that can be already seen by them as a responsible person, but a person that also cares about them and loves them, and they will feel enough courage to go and talk with that person about their problems. A mentor. And I think that youth leaders are called to do this. Young people need adults in their lives. Even though sometimes they show us that they don't need adults in their lives, but they need responsible people. And I think this is our calling. Our calling is to love them, and our calling is to support them and provide a voice of reasoning for them who are only able at that moment to listen to us. I don't think we, should be friends only with them, in the sense that only fun and games with the youth, but also do enough and sufficient serious things with them that they should understand that you are a person that they can depend on and talk with you. And our offering is to offer this to love and support to them, because this is the way that their conflict in their lives can turn to for a better person in the future. And if our goal is to lead them to Christ, I think that we should be there to provide the answers for them to also get closer to God in those conflict stages of their life, so that they can learn to depend on Him to resolve the issues for them. In a nutshell, that's my philosophy. Any questions, or do you want to talk about something? Are there any issues that you want to address?
For me, it's not simple to do at the same time the pastor and the youth leader.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes these figures are in conflict for me.
Okay. Let me turn this off. Seminar is over.